Hey, what's up? Janko here. Just a quick video of something that I thought might be of interest for other developers out there as well, where I want to show you how I currently use AI-based IDEs, in that case Windsurf, to get to a better interaction between the AI developer and the human developer, and how I can also learn something while doing so. 4 takeaways: ask for a game plan, ask for not destroying your code base, ask to persist that game plan that you came up with, also ask it questions, try to learn from it, and try to persist that learning in a markdown file. But maybe let's start as a point of reference from where we left off in my previous videos, where I showcased how you can use tools like bolt.new to take an initial idea that you might have and turn it into a workable prototype of an app and the code behind that. And maybe let's showcase that once more real quick. Please create a task manager app with Vite. And as you can see, literally in seconds, we will end up with a workable prototype of an app. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, I actually applaud that because I think it's a democratization of the entire app creation process that before AI was basically guarded or gatekept, sorry about that, by developers. So you needed to know a lot about full stack development to actually make that happen. And as you can see, this app is functional, so you can create a little task. Sorry about that, and maybe another one. And you see the tasks, and you can cross them off, and you can delete them. Perfect. You can even go and deploy that on infrastructure of the company behind Bolt, which is called StackBlitz, and actually get it out there to use. You can also download it and maybe use it in another IDE and refine it. Also perfect. The thing I just want to mention or highlight here, don't install, no, not now, is if you opt into this model or way of programming where you as the human take seat on the passenger seat, I don't know if you said it in English like that, but you're not in the driver's seat, you're in the passenger seat, then you need to be aware that at some point things will fall apart. And Steve from Builder.io just did a great video on that, where he basically showcased this with this little graph here. You can argue about the terminology of falling into the pit of death, but you will fall into a pit, that's for sure. And you will hurt yourself if you let the AI just do everything apart from you as a human phrasing the initial requirements in form of your prompt. And yes, you can converse with the AI, you can try to tweak the app and extend the app, but at some point in time, and Steve does a great job in showcasing or talking about when and how this will take place, you will fall. And then you still need development skills to actually then go and fix it. Right. So while I would advocate for trying out this stuff, I would also advocate for you still need to learn code. So I'm totally on that side, on the same side here with Steve, and also the Primogen talks a lot about that. That yes, you still need to learn how to code, or it's at least good if you know how to code. That's kind of like my segue over to true IDEs, so integrated developer or development environments. I only use the abbreviation, so I don't know the full name. Basically code editors, if you will. And while there are many, and I also use many, I started with Visual Studio Code or VS Code that you might have heard, and I'm a big fan still of Cursor. But there's a new kid on the block, and it's called Windsurf from Codium. And currently, this is my favorite tool. Why? Because of this, basically. They talk a lot about flow, and while, yes, this might also be a marketing bullshit term, it does capture the feeling that I have. Yes, I have feelings when I code, of interacting with the AI while coding, because it's a really cool way of interacting, and an interaction experience as well, at least, when you work or develop in Windsurf, of the AI and the human developer actually working hand in hand. It really feels like that. And I wanted to show that to you really quick, and also talk about a couple of my hacks or stuff that seems to work for me quite well while in in Windsurf, which will also work in Cursor, which will also work in Visual Studio Code if you use the Copilot from GitHub, GitHub Copilot, it's actually called. And maybe to start things off, so I do have an app that I created or co-created with the AI, and now I want to go and deploy that on Railway. And usually there are a couple of hoops that you need to jump through before you can actually deploy an app yourself. For example, running it through or making it, Dockerizing it. I call that Dockerizing it, so putting it into a Docker image that you can then run as a Docker container. And usually regarding the database backend, we need to migrate from SQLite that I use for local local development to something like Postgres, which is a better way of or better database backend for production workload. And the first hack and my first takeaway here is to ask the AI before you tell it, go ahead and do it, ask it what the game plan is. You can also call that differently. Because I like sports and I come from a sports background, I like to talk in terms of a game plan. And it's great because we can discuss it before the AI actually goes and does something. And so I ask it to phrase that as a game plan. I usually tell it also to go step by step and be thorough and stuff like that, typical prompt engineering stuff. And the cool thing about that is that we can actually discuss things, right? So for example, here I asked it, can we also should and can we use SQLite on Railway? Because I didn't know if that was even possible. I wanted to move fast, and usually changing stuff from SQLite to Postgres, while it's both SQL based, does have some migration friction, if you will, right? So, and it's cool because if you have a game plan that's laid out to you as a human developer, you can actually phrase or form your mental model of what the AI wants to do before actually doing something. So that's the first step in staying in the driver's seat and not just be a passive observer of what the AI does. And my second hack is usually once we discussed, and once, for example, here I say, okay, I'm fine, let's go to Postgres then. Try not to destroy any code. So that's actually second or another takeaway that I actually didn't even plan on or didn't have on my list, but add that to the list. Because if you don't do that, the AI might skip certain parts that would sometimes destroy working code. And I made the experience, if you tell it not to destroy existing code, then it goes and it doesn't, right? So it says, okay, you need to tell me that I don't need to or shouldn't destroy anything. I'm fine with that. You just need to tell me, basically. And the next thing, so the third takeaway then is to go and persist this game plan that you just came up with. Actually, let me readjust the focus here a little bit. And in doing so I tell it, create a little markdown file in a certain directory. You can also see, you can reference files and directories with the symbol, and then the file name or the directory name. So I told it where I would want it to, where it should persist it. And I usually also tell it to, hey, give it or write it in a way that how you would phrase it if you handed over your requirements and instructions to an actual human developer that should go and then create the app or do the refactoring or whatever you want needs to be done in the code. And this little thing then, the game plan ends up in, or it looks like this in our case, which is really good because it serves as a reference for both the AI and the carbon meat bag. Because I don't know about you, but when I didn't work on a code base for a couple of days, let alone weeks, I tend to forget the details, right? I tend to forget what actually we wanted to do and all the little nitty-gritty details of which code to change in which file and how to adapt the class or the function, and where certain functionality might be spread out across different files that you need to remember to, if you do a change here, then you also need to update something here. All of that stuff, right? And the AI in a way is similar. So in a little bit different way. The AI usually, when you have really long running conversations with the AI, the context window gets filled up more and more. And at some point, it just starts effing up, basically, right? It starts to forget stuff that it should have done, or it creates duplicated code, and then you need to tell it, hey, we already got this component here, why didn't you use that? And then it goes and apologizes. And this is usually the time when you should restart your conversation by starting a new conversation in the IDE and not continuing with the existing one. And at the latest, at that stage, it's really helpful to have a sort of like a design document or a game plan that you can then just reference in your first prompt to say, hey, this is what we want to do. And you reference this game plan that you created together with the @ symbol and the file name. And then you basically are on the same page right from the get-go. What's also cool, the AI usually goes and adds this little checkbox things where you can then, either you or the AI can then go in and say, whenever a task is done or completed, you actually cross it off with a little X in here. So that's also kind of like a nice UX thing, at least for me. I like to see lots of crosses or crosses filling up. So that was the third takeaway. The fourth takeaway is, and that goes back to staying in the driver's seat. I usually really try to test each and every design or code proposition from the AI. So it would propose code in my existing files, and then you either need to accept it or reject it. And I try to understand, even ideally before accepting a certain change, what this change actually is and what implications arise from it for the rest of my code base or my file or my class or function or whatever I'm in. And sometimes I might be a bit lazy of saying, I'm not sure about this, but I accept it, but I try to reason about it myself actively and ask questions if I don't understand anything. And you can actually take this one step further to say, after the AI maybe explained some design decision in a bit more detail, you can then go and ask it to also persist that learning in some document, right? And in my example, I'm really bad in remembering the specific details that it takes to take a PostgreSDB from a Docker image, spin up a Docker container locally with all the stuff like user authentication and the exact structure of the URL that I need to then use in my Python code and my Python client for that PostgreSDB, stuff like that, right? And I'm not okay with that, right? I do want to, I think it's our obligation also as carbon meatbags with this limited brain of ours to still try and learn as much and also remember as much as we can, at least if it's relevant for your work, right? So this is what I basically did to say, okay, let's I need to test this first. I just don't want to go ahead and trust that everything works. I need to test moving from SQLite to Postgres locally. And I don't remember a lot of stuff about this. So can you please create a little how-to in yet another Markdown file in the same directory? And this is actually what we're gonna do live here. So I asked it, and you will see it will come up with creating this new file here that doesn't exist yet. Actually, it kind of exists because I ran this when I actually worked on that before deciding to shoot a video on it, but I deleted it, and now you see the basically the the content of that file, and it asks me, do you want to accept this new file that I created? Since it's the entire file, there's not much to question here. Of course, I will accept it. But if you have an existing file, there might only be parts that are changed. And then it's this exact moment of what's actually changing and reasoning about that. And then saying, okay, I understand. And I'm in favor of the change, or I either don't understand or I don't think that's a good idea. Both can happen. Right. So here it will give me, or now I have a little how-to guide on how to set up my Docker Compose file, my YAML file, all the Docker commands that I need to use, and things like username, password, database, the port, the host, and so on. Stuff like that you need to figure out or gut down if you really want to use Postgres. For example, I always forget this part in particular, like what the Postgres URL needs to be like structure-wise to have the host name in there, the password, and the port, and all that stuff. Right, and that's about it. So maybe to round things off, 4 takeaways. Ask for a game plan. Ask for not destroying your code base when working with the AI. Ask to persist that game plan that you came up with, and then also ask it questions about your code or about the code changes that the AI proposes, and try to learn from it and try to persist that learning in yet another persisted Markdown file or in a Markdown file. All right, hope you got something out of that, and catch you in the next one. Bye.